Welcome to Industry Ignited, where we shine a light on leaders and organizations transforming the way business is done, not just for profit, but for people. Today's episode is about rethinking the workplace as more than a paycheck. It's about building systems and programs that create true opportunity, stability, and dignity for every employee. Joining me are two incredible guests from Rhino Foods Foundation, Christina Blunt, Executive Director, and Justin Worthley, Board Member and seasoned HR, Operations, and Organizational Leader. Christina is a social impact professional whose career spans the Middle East, West Africa, and the U.S., helping nonprofits and international NGOs build capacity, strengthen partnerships, and ensure operational excellence. She's led humanitarian capacity development programs, designed wraparound services for families facing financial insecurity, and has been a driving force behind initiatives that bridge businesses and social impact. Justin brings decades of experience guiding purpose-driven organizations through transformation. He's worked directly with owners and leadership teams since 2003, leading change efforts, building high-performance cultures, and aligning business strategy with people strategy. His work is rooted in the belief that performance and purpose multiply each other for greater impact. At the heart of today's conversation is Rhino Foods Foundation's mission, spreading innovative workplace practices that champion employee financial stability and make good business sense. From their groundbreaking income advanced loan program to their creative employee exchange program, Rhino Foods has pioneered solutions that improve retention, productivity, and employee well-being, inspiring companies nationwide to follow their lead. We'll talk about how these programs started, how they work, and the measurable impact they've had, and we'll explore what it takes for other businesses to adopt similar models. Christina, Justin, welcome to Industry Ignited.
Great to be
Thank
here.
you so much.
Thank you. Christina, let's start with you. Your background spans humanitarian work overseas, program design and public health, and now leading the Rhino Foods Foundation. What drew you to this mission?
Thanks so much for having us, Leeanne, and that's a great question. I think what struck me about the foundation and its mission, and in particular the Income Advance program, which we'll talk a little bit more about, was it struck me as such a unique approach to corporate social responsibility. I think most of what makes up that category of practices can either feel like a bit of a PR exercise or an effort to repair something that the business is extracting from the community and sort of reinvesting in the community in that way. And what the foundation and what Rhino Foods were doing and are doing felt more like rectifying a problem on behalf of employees. So understanding that there are systemic challenges that employees face and that businesses have an opportunity to help ease those challenges, create new systems. And so I'd never encountered a business that was looking to do that before, let alone to scale that kind of approach to other businesses.
So I'm hearing that, the approach of just listening to the employees and meeting their needs instead of just an obligation that they feel to meet for some kind of societal expectation is what really
Absolutely
makes that initiative different.
Yeah, it felt more than transactional. It felt like a really response out of a sense of community and solidarity.
Yeah, I like that. So we'll move to you, Justin. You've spent years driving operational and cultural change in purpose-driven organizations. What was it about Rhino's approach that inspired you to join the board?
Yeah, I'll build on, Christina's thoughts. I think that, Rhino is, and by extension, the foundation is just, it's an incredibly authentic organization and is not interested in just sort of putting money out into the community. I mean, that's a good thing. Great that organizations do that. But I think Rhino has always been very deeply invested in its business practices and seeking to integrate purpose within the sort of the core way it's approaching its work, whether that's working with its suppliers, customers, or workforce. So there's this high level of sort of integrity and authenticity that is certainly out there in the world. There's a lot of other B Corps that are, on a very similar mission. And I think Rhino's really one of the best role models of making purpose really come alive on a day-to-day basis, not just as an afterthought or a philanthropic exercise. So any way I could help that move forward, and I had some years at Rhino. I was there when the income advance practice got off the ground. So I had a personal connection to the business and to the folks at Rhino as well.
Okay, so you were working at Rhino. In what capacity were you there?
I was there initially in an HR director role and then became the general manager. And that was back from about 2006 to 2011.
Okay, and so you just really related to the authenticity, the way they ran business, and that just led you to want to continue contributing and to that mission, and then join the board.
Yeah,
To
absolutely.
help
This
others.
foundation,
Yeah.
this foundation, it's kind of a unique thing.
Yeah.
It's pretty special. So it's been cool to be part of seeing it get off the ground.
So for listeners who may not know Rhino Foods history, can you share how the company's culture and values laid the foundation for creating the nonprofit?
Yeah, so Rhino's been around for a long time. Started in the 90s by Ted Castle, who's still the owner. And it's now in second generation leadership. His son, Rooney Castle's the current president and CEO. And Rhino started and still is primarily a ingredient manufacturer for the ice cream industry. They make cookie dough and other pieces that go into packaged ice cream. Partnership with Ben & Jerry's, they were the first company to figure out how to make cookie dough to go into packaged ice cream on an industrial scale. And now send probably most cookie dough ice cream that you're eating. That cookie dough is made by Rhino Foods. But really central to Ted's mission from the beginning was around innovative workplace practices, wanting to have a real commitment to the workforce and, purpose more generally. And that is, Rhino's stated purpose is to impact the manner in which business is done. So not just make great products, but do business in a way that makes sense, is innovative, and creates a really strong internal culture.
Okay, great. And so to spread that culture and extend it and give other companies the opportunity to get involved, they created then, by extension, the Rhino Foods Foundation. Is that right? With these
Yeah,
specific
absolutely. Maybe
initiatives?
Christina, you want to jump in there with that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rhino had been building these practices or adopting them at the very least, and had been very vocal about what it was learning along the way. And I think joining the B Corp community in 2013 was really a catalyst for the growth of a lot of those practices beyond Rhino and beyond Vermont. And so our director of HR at the time and the owner and president at the time, Ted Castle, were just getting a lot of requests for more information, to come and speak, to share the practice. And so in 2018, that was really the tipping point where they felt like this really has become its own thing. And this is something we're really committed to. And it's fulfilling that core purpose of impacting the manner in which business is done. And so we're going to spin this capacity building work off into its own nonprofit so that others can share in the mission, and so that it can really have its own legs while the business itself, we're still delivering cookie dough to those who need it.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just
every day.
Need. We all need.
Exactly.
Yes, I need.
right. Okay. So I'm just really hearing that expanded like organically and then really developed into something they wanted to formalize to create programs around so that others could benefit from their culture and the programs they were creating for employees because it just caught on, is what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Exactly that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And one of the most recognized initiatives is the Income Advance Loan Program. How did this idea first come about, and what were problems that you were trying to solve?
I'm going to let Justin take this because he's been quite humble to date. But Justin really was the person that took the initiative to develop this program or to help pilot it within Rhino Foods. And he's sort of he's the godfather here. So,
I don't know if that's
Justin.
the right title, but well, and it was pretty simple. There was an employee at Rhino who had a situation come up where he needed some money and asked Ted, actually was there in a day-to-day role at the time, asked Ted if he could get an advance on his paycheck. And Ted came to me and asked if I could help figure that out and make that happen. And it was sort of a unadvertised thing that, Ted's got a big heart and he would help people out when they needed that. And what I stumbled into is just some internal sort of logistical challenges around doing that. There wasn't really a structure. And, we were able to pull it off internally, but then I happened to bump into Bob Morgan, who was at still is at North Country Federal Credit Union, where I was doing some personal banking, and just started talking to him about it and said, hey, we had this situation come up where an employee was looking for an advance on his paycheck. And, do you guys do anything like that? Do you have any products, public facing products that we could connect this employee with? And it happened to be great timing. And Bob said, no, he didn't, but he was working on trying to come up with a pilot program to combat sort of predatory payday lending products as part of the credit union's community outreach efforts. And so we decided to partner up, and we created the first ever income advance loan as essentially Rhino as a business was sort of underwriting or guaranteeing vouching for the employee, but the loan itself was through the credit union. And in return for the partnership, the credit union waived the typical credit check that happened. So it was basically automatically guaranteed. And that was sort of the humble origin. And what we found also at the same time, a really important factor is that several of us at Rhino were engaged in an effort that was run by the United Way of Chittenden County called Bridges Out of Poverty, which was a training curriculum based on Ruby Payne's book by the same name. And it was really, I think, a breakthrough to realize that not only were we just like making a loan available, but we were meeting people where they were at and helping to address really a sort of a chronic unmet need that a lot of employees would experience, some sort of financial crunch, right? It could be a whole number of types of things. And they didn't have access to those financial products or didn't seek them out. I think it was either one or the other. And that for us, stepping in with that relationship helped start building trusted relationships between employees and these lenders. And just countless stories since then of this program expanding, where people come back, they take out additional loans, they're building their credit really for the first time in their lives, or repairing bad credit, where they can then move on to other types of lending products that many of us use on a day-to-day basis in our lives. And another key feature that happened early on was turning the loan into a savings program, where the person who was handling payroll at the time jokes and says she was just lazy and didn't want to have to mess around and turn off the deduction. But it turned into this great feature where once the loan was repaid through payroll deduction, the deduction stayed in place and then flowed into a savings account. People could turn it off if they didn't want to do that, but the vast majority leave it on. So it actually captures people in a moment of sort of crisis or need and converts that into a savings opportunity for them. And just so many people would come back and say to us, I've never saved money before in my life ever. And thank you for making this so easy. So sort of through a series of steps, we move from sort of crisis emergency to, more planful financing for people's day-to-day lives.
Yeah, so the program, it not only provides the emergency loans, but it encourages savings, it helps build credit. And can you walk us through the process from an employee's perspective? Are there requirements that they have to meet? Are they only for specific situations?
No, so the loan itself is intended to be as frictionless as possible. So we want it to be easy for folks to use and to feel like that there is no judgment in using it. Essentially, there's a whole category of people who just do not have access to safe, reliable, non-predatory emergency funding. And I think the latest data is something like 36% of Americans don't have $400 in cash or its equivalent for an emergency expense. And so if you think about, yeah, a third of the population doesn't have the ability to cover a minor car repair. I don't feel like I can even go get my oil change without walking out spending $500 on something.
Right.
And so it's really startling. And the sad truth is it's just not that financially, there's not a real financial incentive for lenders to make these kinds of loans. It's small dollar. It's so what the end result of that is that folks are putting expenses on credit cards where they just don't have a better option than to do that. They are taking payday loans. They're using earned wage access programs for emergency expenses rather than just for their day-to-day expenses. And so our position at the foundation and that is carrying forward Rhino's position is this is just a fact of life. It's not our job to police how you use your money, and it's not our job to ask you and to make a decision about what this loan is for. In fact, I think that was a big part of why Rhino was so keen on adopting this program is, Ted would make personal loans, and that really gets you into this slippery slope of saying, well, like I gave it to this guy because it was for this thing, but do I really want to give it to this person for that? This is, allowing people the dignity to make their own financial decisions. And so, from the employee perspective, as long as you are in good standing, and what that means is essentially you've been at your employer for a certain probationary period. It's the employer's way of saying to the lender, I have a pretty good feeling this person is going to be here for the whole term of the loan, which is usually 6 to 12 months. So if turnover drops off at your business after 6 months, 6 months is the eligibility period. And there's no sort of disciplinary action in process that makes me think like actually like Justin's on his way out. So it's not a good bet. And other than that, you walk into people and culture or human resources, you grab an application, depending on the employer and the culture of that workplace. That can be a piece of paper. It can be online. You fill out the basics of how much money you need. And that gets passed on to somebody in human resources who verifies your eligibility and passes the information along to the lender. And that day, somebody from the lender will reach out to the employee, finish getting all of the specifics. If they're not currently a member of the credit union or a customer of the bank, they'll set them up with a savings account. And then the loan is issued. We try to make sure with our lending partners that the funds can be available within 24 to 48 hours. So really, we want people to feel like they can get past that financial emergency as quickly as possible. And then the repayment is communicated to human resources. So how much is going to be deducted from the paycheck each month or each pay period, and they go from there. But the idea is for it to be really simple, straightforward, transparent. And that's where that trust building starts to come into place. There's no fine print, there's no hidden fees, there's no penalties for early repayment. It just is, you set it and forget it. And hopefully if you forget it for long enough, you get a really nice little savings account at the end of it.
Yeah. So just a way to really empower the employees, put the decision making in their hands as far as how much or when to access the funds, and then it helps them like build credit in the process, and hopefully savings if they
Absolutely.
continue the
Yeah.
program afterwards. Yeah,
And
That's
keep
great.
it simple. I mean, so between the business and the whatever the lending institution is, there's usually a very simple like memorandum of understanding type 1 page or maybe 2 page agreement. The business pays a small nominal fee to the lender to establish it. And once that's set, then as Christina explained, it's just that very simple interaction, either, quick conversation, fill out a form, and then over to the lender. And, they're not doing any other underwriting or, credit analysis. They're just moving the fund, getting an account set up and moving the funds in. So keep it super simple and take the judgment out of the process. That was really an important thing. Remains an important thing about like, this isn't about being in a position of whatever. Childcare and car breakdowns are good reasons, but something else is a bad reason to borrow the money. So it's really, there's a limit on it. It's usually, I think, Christina, most companies are $1,000 or $1,500. But also there's no limit on, once you repay the loan, you take another one out, just like lots of other lending products that we all use in our day-to-day lives. So that was another thing up front of, we had a lot of discussion about, is there any reason why there would be constraint or limits? And, you take out a loan, you pay it off. Why can't you take another one? So that actually helps people's credit, and has allowed people to be able to take loans out for other needs as well, cars, even homes. So it's been some pretty mind-boggling stories.
Yeah, and we see the loan being used for, as Justin said, a whole variety of things, from what you would consider like a classic sort of emergency situation. I think in the early days, it was a lot of car repair stuff, and that helps retention at the business. If somebody in a rural area like Vermont doesn't have reliable transportation and starts to have to rely on, a spouse or a roommate or a relative or a friend getting them to work on time at a manufacturing environment, you know, 3 times not showing up for a shift on time, and talk about instability, losing your job, and just the sort of spiraling effect that can cause. So those were sort of the classic examples in the early days. But now, with the way that we see the credit industry evolving and what is a sort of a median APR on a credit card, we have lots of people who are chief human resources officers who, want to buy a pair of skis for a family member as a gift and don't want it to show up on the credit card. And they take out the loan, and it sort of feels like a discreet way to make a special purchase. Or quite frankly, if you need a new hot water heater and you're not going to pay that back in 1 month, this is a better option. It's a less expensive option than putting it over your credit card on your credit card and knowing that you'll be paying it back over a 6-month period. I think one of our founders' favorite stories is somebody buying a wedding ring, or an engagement ring. You talk about financial stress and being distracted in the workplace. Like, imagine wanting to take that step in your life, having somebody else that is wanting to take that step in your collective life, and not being able to afford to make that gesture. And so, yeah, it's the good, it's the bad, it's the happy, it's the sad. But at the end of the day, it's providing that access,
Yeah, just
for
the
employees to be able
access
to
of,
have that dignity. Yeah.
right, at a lower rate, so savings. And no, those are great examples, great stories of how those can uh, access to those funds can empower employees and give them peace of mind and just or get engaged and have
Yeah.
happiness in their lives. All right, that's awesome. All right. So let's talk about one of your other programs, the Employee Exchange Program. It's a really creative solution to seasonal staffing challenges. How does the program work, and what has been the response from both employees and partner companies?
Justin, do you want to take this, or
Yeah, this was a practice that was in place at Rhino when I was there. It had gone a little bit dormant, but we used it during the time, and it's essentially like I don't know, it's almost like a reverse temp agency model where Rhino is a seasonal business, so busier in the spring and summer, and things are a little quieter in the winter. And, we would invest a significant amount of time and money in, hiring, onboarding, training new staff that were doing all kinds of different operational jobs throughout the business. And we started slowing down in the winter, and we would want to do everything we could to retain that key staff so we wouldn't have to start over again. So we found local businesses that sort of had complementary seasonal fluctuations. There's a chocolate company that was, really busy through the holiday period all the way through Valentine's Day. They've been I think one of the most steady employee exchange partners over decades and now at this point. So we would essentially maintain those employees on the payroll, and we would enter into an agreement with that other business to essentially sort of operate as a staffing agency. So those employees would show up to work at that other business to do jobs in that location, but still receive their Rhino Foods paycheck and benefits. So there was no disruption or interruption for them personally. So both for the employee, obviously having to go through, leaving a job, seeking temporary employment, maybe coming back or seeking something else. It's highly disruptive for that person and their family. And also for the business to lose that, talent that's been invested in over that time. So over the years, that model has not, I don't think every year Rhino uses it, but I think it's become quite a regular thing, and it takes work. It definitely is not just a turnkey thing. It takes a lot of strong communication and partnership with other employers to really figure out what are the types of roles that make sense, how to prepare employees that are going in, as well as a team that's already there to really be partnering together, get the training they need. But it's been a huge, stabilizer, workforce stabilizer. I think that's the common thread between both income advance and employee exchange, is these are programs designed to really help stabilize the workforce, so that whether you're a purpose-driven business or you're just a business that's in turmoil, that you've got retention challenges or safety issues. In the years I was at Rhino, those were two things that were both flaring up. So some of resurrecting and, dusting off these practices was part of just helping create more stability. So, we just have more predictability in the workforce on a day-to-day basis. Christina, what did I miss on exchange? Any other
No,
points you'd add in there?
I would just say that it is one that I know that Rhino is using actively right now and has for the last few years. So as Justin mentioned, as workforce ebbs and flows, as business ebbs and flows, this is a sort of program that we don't need to use every year, but I know for the last several that Rhino has, and I think it's emblematic of two really important things. The first is this active decision to not just follow business as usual. So standard business practice would be just to lay folks off and say, this is a seasonal business. It's who we are. But what we know is it's not good for the people who work for the company, and it's really not good for the company. Hiring 20 people to work as batter makers in a month, like that kind of scale up and a really tight labor market in a place like Vermont, which I know is very similar to a lot of other places around the country, is sort of a Herculean effort. And so it's a willingness to step back and say, actually, it's not smart business, first and foremost, and it's not good for the people that we work with. The second thing that I think the employee exchange program really exemplifies is that sort of community focus, where, as Justin touched on, you really need to have deep, trusting relationships in the community to make something like this work. And so I think having the opportunity to introduce something like the income advance program into a community and start to build that muscle within an an employer and within a community, and then to sort of open up the conversation to say, well, what else could we be doing? This is working so well for the workforce here. What are some other ways that we can continue to increase stability? And all of these practices encourage employee engagement and employee retention.
I'd add safety, quality,
Yeah.
productivity. I mean, Rhino's a food business, so all the training that goes into all the, food safety requirements is a big deal.
Yeah.
When we brought employee exchange back to life, that was at the time, that was a big deal of, as Christina says, you bring in 20 or more. I mean, at times it was, 40 or 60 temporary employees to be handling a raw food product. So that investment in retraining folks or training them for the first time and all the quality standards and practices is significant. So to be able to, maintain that and, safe work practices, high productivity, all of that. So it's not just, it's so well rounded, right? It's a good thing to do from an employee perspective and many aspects from an employer point of view as
Right.
well.
Yeah, and I hear the creativity in there, which is inspiring. It's not just a way to uh, cut costs and create retention, but it improves morale, it improves stability for the employee, and when, like you said, I mean, especially in communities or markets where staffing might be an issue just because of people, it yeah, creates that I think fidelity for the company as well. They want to
Totally.
stay because they know they're going to be taken care of. And then it cuts down training, I would think too, because I mean, I'm sure there's some
Yeah, huge.
refreshing training. Overall, you're not having to invest the time and cost for training whole entirely new people from the ground up every single time. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So beyond these programs, what other strategies has Rhino implemented to support employees, particularly refugee employees and those facing unique life challenges?
I'm comfortable touching on some of these, Justin, and maybe you can help me fill in some gaps. I think Rhino became noteworthy in the 90s for really seeing the opportunity in being located in a refugee resettlement area, and we had a really large influx of folks from the Bosnian community coming to the Burlington area looking for work, and um, we were looking for employees. So it just felt like taking advantage of an opportunity that was right in front of us. And uh, my understanding is that it took a lot of work, rethinking, especially as you're starting to create systems and processes and consistency, and Rhino is growing as a business, to then be thinking about how to do that in multiple language and across cultures. Um, it's a challenge, but it's a muscle that the business was able to build. And then to say, well, what are some of the other non-traditional ways that we could be thinking about getting more hardworking people into the business? And so that looked like taking the decision to no longer do background checks. So anybody with a criminal history can still have employment at Rhino without any questions asked. And then that evolved into, well, actually, there's a women's correctional facility right down the road. What are these women doing after they get released? Can we go into the facility and start recruiting people so that they know they have a job as soon as they finish serving their sentence? And so it really, I keep coming back to the analogy, but it's a muscle that gets built over time. And with each new challenge and new success, it encourages you to look sort of further afield and say, what else can we be doing different? This is such a benefit to our business. It's such a benefit to the community. And it creates such an interesting and exciting place to work.
And Christina, I know you've seen firsthand, as you were mentioning, how the programs impact retention and productivity and morale. Can you give some examples of some of the more powerful stories or outcomes that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was sort of gifted with this story that really is such a perfect encapsulation of the approach. We hired a program manager here at the foundation, and um, during his onboarding process, I said, well, I'm going to have you work first shift. at Rhino just to get a feel for the work and for the business and the culture and your your new colleagues. And he didn't introduce himself as being sort of a new employee of the foundation. And so he sat down on a break and asked one of the folks he had been working with all morning, like, what do you like working? What do you like about working at Rhino? And not knowing that he was with the foundation, just sort of launched into this. Well, I was hired with a criminal record out of prison. And it was really, I loved that they took a chance on me. I accessed an income advance loan, and that really helped me to create stability early on. You come out of incarceration with not a lot to your name, and that was instrumental in me being able to keep this job. And then when productivity or when demand turned lower, I did the employee exchange program, and they offered me a job at the end of that, and I said no, like I'd never work anywhere else but Rhino. Why would you go someplace else when people have taken such a chance on you and invested so much in you? And I was sort of,
Yeah.
you really start to see the through line of all of these stories, and the way that people, we all have such complex lives and have complex needs. And when you can show up for somebody in full recognition of that complexity and say, let's figure out a solution. And I'm not sure we touched on it during the employee exchange conversation, but most of these programs are come out of dialogue with employees. It's not sort of lightning strikes the senior management team and a brilliant idea is born. It really is with honest conversation with the team to say, like, we're going to have to lay a bunch of people off. What do we do? Like, how should we figure out a better solution to this than having to say goodbye to a good chunk of our colleagues? So I think that openness and willingness to learn also makes the program so much more effective, because they really respond to the needs that people have and the needs that the business have in a really authentic way.
So I'm hearing that listening, just really, really listening to the employees, and not only listening, but taking what their feedback to heart
Exactly.
and implementing their ideas has made a big.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's at the heart of this approach of what the foundation's all about, is how to help, sort of bring that way of being for other businesses. And these practices are all great. I think they all are worth a look. Maybe they don't all fit in somebody else's business, but so much of sort of what gets offered in the benefits package is a result of what vendors are selling, what providers have available, and those products are usually designed, with some needs in mind, but there are limits on those. So I think that one of the things that's just so unique about how the foundation can help employers is sort of help open your eyes to problems that are playing out on a day-to-day basis, and you actually there aren't really traditional solutions to them. There aren't vendor-driven products on the shelf that do these things that many of these approaches that Rhino has created do, and have impact both on the business and on the people. So, and the question for me is like, so what's next? And that's what's exciting about the foundation work, is when this really starts to sort of have this flywheel effect, and you get other businesses thinking this way of like, so what's the next practice and the next practice and the next practice that can help sort of get businesses to be more productive, efficient, stable, and get people's lives, to be more secure, consistent, and progressing. I mean, these stories are incredible. There was another woman in the time I worked at Rhino who really was in a kind of living in a day-to-day situation, had bounced through several jobs and came to Rhino. I can't remember what the need was. I think her car broke down, and that was her first income advance. And one of the things we realized is just there wasn't trust. When she was told about this income advance loan, she was kind of like looking around like, why would you do this for me? And then she built this relationship with the credit union, and then, took out more loans, and then she was able to get a car loan, and then she was able to buy a home eventually. So just story after story of people, really getting to a whole different place in their life that, helps the business. But they're right there. I think there's more and more of these solutions. We just need to all kind of open our eyes and start looking for them.
Yeah, very, very inspirational. And Justin, from an operations and HR perspective, what business case can you make to other leaders who may think these kinds of programs are maybe nice to have, but not essential?
Yeah, I get super passionate about it, and that's the beauty of this, because I don't know, there's not a single business person that I talk to these days that doesn't say something about productivity challenges, turnover, retention challenges, key talent. Could be safety issues, could be quality issues, like all these things that are affecting the business. And these sets of practices really help create much more of a current of stability that it's really hard to quantify. I think it's the ROI is kind of, I don't know how you put boundaries around that. But these issues are real. I mean, just a single person in a key role that misses a shift, or may miss, as Christina was saying, may miss a series of shifts and end up losing their job. Like, that could have a massive ramification for a business. So just taking some of those issues off the table so you can really focus on what it is that your business is all about, and not have the workforce instability be this variable that's, keeping you up at night wondering about whether that's actually going to be able to work.
And these programs now, I know they've been adopted by around 111 different companies in Vermont and beyond. How do you approach helping other organizations implement these solutions successfully?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. We see the foundation, we see ourselves as sort of part advocacy with like a lowercase a, getting out there and beating the drum, and part capacity building. So once we know somebody wants to adopt one of these practices, we're sort of all in on giving them whatever kind of help they need to get it off the ground. And that looks different in different places. As you noted, there's 111 businesses here in Vermont and just over the border in New Hampshire that use the income advance program. But there's over 300 nationally. And so we're growing in really thoughtful, systematic ways in certain markets, getting out there and recruiting lenders throughout New England so that we can connect businesses to those lenders and start the program. And in other places, as far away as San Diego, we're having businesses come to us and say, this is something we really want to bring to our community. So how can you help us identify a lender? Can you help us get them on board and help us bring this product or this program to our people and to our community? And from my perspective, it really is. It's a structural shift in a community's ecosystem, whether it's the workforce or the the lending and finance space, but it's self-sustaining. That's the whole idea of the income advance program, is it's creating access, and so it doesn't require us to stay in your community for the long run and keep prodding and poking. Once there are champions in place within a community, and once the basic infrastructure is set up, it runs on its own, and it just continues to pay back in dividends around community engagement and retention. So we really think of this program as an investment in the long-term financial health, not just of your employees, but of your whole local economy. There's nothing that Vermonters want more than to make sure folks are staying in Vermont and that businesses can thrive here. And so we see it as incumbent on us to do everything we can to help make that possible.
So I'm hearing the programs have not just a local or a business impact, but it impacts the entire community. And word is spreading, and you have a nationwide reach, it sounds like. And
Yes, yeah.
yeah. So what's next for Rhino Foods Foundation? Are there new programs or partnerships in the works?
That's such a great question. For us, there's still so much potential for growth of the income advance program. And we really do see it as the beginning of a conversation in a community around how to be creative and responsive to employee needs. And at the same time, we see employee needs increasing in a really rapid and dramatic way. And so the work that we see ourselves really engaging in moving forward is working with fellow employers to say, how can we, beyond the paycheck, really start to think creatively about making sure there's stability in the lives of employees, because we don't have a business without that. So if folks can't access healthcare, if they can't access food, what's the point of showing up at all? And maybe it's that they simply can't. And so we want to make sure that employers understand that they have a role to play beyond the sort of transactional, and that they have a lot of influence and power in their community. So working really closely with employees to understand their needs, and then with other businesses to understand what's possible. I think those are the conversations we're really hoping to encourage, and then to be able to elevate best practices from those conversations to help communities across the country.
So, for leaders who are listening today who want to create more supportive, financially stable workplaces, what's the first step they should take? How do they get started?
Well, they can give us a call, send us an email, or really, I think first and foremost, it's about just having a chat with your team and a sort of a very humble approach. It's not, don't call a company meeting and ask people how they're doing, but really start to get thoughtful about how you get to know and build trust with your employees. I think every business is different in terms of their starting point, and Justin probably can give some better advice there. But I think it is really about beginning with understanding and learning. Justin, I don't know if you want to
Yeah,
add
well,
something.
and Christina's being a little humble too, in that the foundation has got incredible resources that, just go to the website, rhinofoodsfoundation.org, and there are program descriptions and tools and, all kinds of things say like, what is this thing and why would I ever consider it? Christina is outstanding, has brought incredible leadership to the foundation, just a few short years thus far. We just hired another great person who happens to live in Maine, but has turned into a great sort of geographic focus there. So there's a lot happening in the state of Maine right now between lenders and employers. So the resource availability, either whether you're start with just self-serve on the website or make that phone call, send that email to Christina, and can help with more customized support. So, and I think that's, where I said at the beginning, this foundation's a little weird. I think people are like, why, what are you trying to do here? Are you selling me something? And, really this is this expression of, this impact and manner in which business is done. It is the purpose of the foundation is to spread innovative workplace practices. And the more that the conversations can get connected and these ripples can just keep going out, like that's what we're all about. I'm honored to be on the board. There's just incredible board of directors lineup that's helping, from all kinds of different perspectives. I think one of the other key things that the foundation is really getting its arms around now is breaking through some of the myths about why this can't happen or hasn't happened in the past, including by lenders. That was sort of a myth. We felt like there was some banking rule that prevented banks from loaning money in this manner. And we've still been unable to actually put our finger on that. So that's just a myth that we hopefully have busted through. But that technical expertise is increasing all the time, maybe directly or indirectly connecting and networking people across, other lenders as well. So that networking ability is a huge factor too.
So I'm hearing that you have resources, you have expertise, and you have the willingness not only to share information, but to support other organizations implement these programs and get creative around solutions for their employees and empowering not only their employees, but making their workplaces a better place to work and more and by virtue, I guess, just by as a result, they'll be more productive and they'll be safer and they'll improve their communities as a whole just by implementing these programs. Well,
Yeah, we
Christina,
think so.
yeah, Justin, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your passion for building workplaces that change lives. The work Rhino Foods Foundation is doing proves that when businesses put people first, everybody wins. And for our listeners, you can learn more at rhinofoodsfoundation.org and explore resources to bring these innovative programs to your own workplace. So again, thank you so much. And until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and help ignite change in your industry. Thank you.
Ashley.
Thank you.